Okay, guys, welcome back to our debate on whether or not Wolverine from Marvel Comics would be able to kill the Hulk. Alright, I am here on Yahoo Answers, and someone has proposed the question. And this question is stronger: Wolverine's adamantium claws or the Hulk's bones? Which is stronger? Alright, so he says, he's asking this question. We all know that the Hulk can't withstand being attacked by Wolverine's claws from the Marvel DVD Hulk Versus and comics. So answer this: can Wolverine kill the Hulk? Not Bruce Banner. Okay. Yeah. Wolverine is able to cut through the Hulk's skin. We know that. We've seen him do it. The Hulk bleeds when he's cut by Wolverine's claws. Wolverine's claws are so sharp and strong they can cut through pretty much anything, even though Hulk's muscle tissue can withstand a bullet at point blank range. It's a different type of physics what we're talking about here. A bullet at point blank range is different than a piercing tip of metal. Okay, and we're going to get into that, the science of that right now. As we begin to talk about this. So knowing that Wolverine's claws can slice open the Hulk's skin, can he cut through the Hulk enough to kill him? Can he cut deep enough? Let's continue reading. He says, I believe that Wolverine would be able to defeat him by decapitation as long as he doesn't get really, really, really strong, since Hulk's bones would most likely begin to get denser and harder to cut. This is true. Not only would Hulk's bones get denser, his muscles would get denser, his whole body would get bigger, okay, which would make things much more difficult. So the more Wolverine cuts the Hulk, the angrier Hulk gets. Okay, as I've said before, the Hulk would have to be weakened. He'd have to be unconscious or restrained in order for Wolverine to do this. Okay? Now, he's talking about decapitation, which is one way to kill the Hulk, possibly. Okay? There are other ways you could presumably kill the Hulk, like maybe puncture his vital organ, like a liver or a lung or a heart, his heart even, you know. But to do that, you'd have to get really, really deep into the Hulk's body, and he's so thick, his muscles are so dense, that'd be extremely difficult. We don't know the dimensions of the Hulk's body, and we don't know the exact dimensions or the length of Wolverine's blades, his claws. But we're talking about, would Wolverine be able to decapitate the Hulk? In order to do that, obviously, he'd have to cut through his neck. He'd have to slice his neck off. Now, the Hulk's neck is pretty darn thick compared to the size and the thickness of Wolverine's blades. Let's continue reading. He says, also, keep in mind that Wolverine's adamantium lace bones are always at their peak, always. Hulk has to obtain his peak through anger. So what's your answer? Okay, well, we already knew that. So, can Wolverine cut through the Hulk's neck? That's what we want to know. Let's see. Let's go down to, before we look at the best answer, let's look at the other answers here. This one says, Wolverine's adamantium claws. Adamantium is unbreakable. The only one that can break it is omnipotence. Yes, it's true. We already know that. All right, this guy says, Wolverine should be able to defeat the Hulk because his bones are at their peak constantly. Plus, Wolverine is way more agile in those fighting styles to confound Hulk and just avoid his strength advantages. All right, that really doesn't tell us anything, but consider this: the amount of time it takes Wolverine to cut through that much muscle, that much skin, that much tissue, in order to actually separate the Hulk's head from his body, from his shoulders. Would he be able to do it? Eventually, he's going to get to the bone, the vertebrae. Will he be able to cut through that? No, he won't be able to do it if he doesn't have enough time. Most likely the Hulk would kill him before that or incapacitate him. But if the Hulk was completely restrained or weakened, Wolverine might be able to do it. Let's read the voted on best answer here. Okay, the best answer from Ben B. It says, I think it might be difficult for Wolverine to chop through the Hulk. In many cases, we see Wolverine can stab through almost any object. And this makes sense in terms of real-world physics. A bulletproof vest will not stop stabbing knife. This is because there is a very strong and constant force behind the tiny tip. The tiny size of the tip means more pounds per square inch. In the case of a cutting weapon, the physics are much different than stabbing. The entire length of the blade is now creating friction as opposed to just the tip. Okay, so he's starting to talk about cutting versus stabbing. Okay, with stabbing, you'll be able to penetrate the skin and probably the muscle and get pretty deep. Okay, but that's a completely different physics than stabbing, which you have to create momentum. You have to provide a swing and a slash. Okay, if all three, the thickness of the claws have to go through diagonally. Have to go through the skin and the muscle of the Hulk. So it seems like actually stabbing the Hulk would be easier than slashing the Hulk. But in order to cut the neck off, the neck from the head, you would have to slash. You wouldn't be able to just stab your way through, obviously. So you have to use the thicker part of the claws to cut through the neck. Would he be able to do that? Let's continue reading. You should also keep in mind that Wolverine does not possess the strength required to cut through objects that are both thick and incredibly dense like the Hulk's neck. He is relatively weak in terms of physical strength when compared to other superheroes. As Wolverine cuts through the Hulk's super dense flesh, his blades will slow down as they encounter more friction. This is true, I believe it. I agree. Keep in mind that Wolverine's claws are depicted as razor sharp at the blade edge, but the wider it gets as they go backwards, much like a samurai sword. This width is where the friction comes into play. So he's implying that Wolverine would not be able to do it because towards the bottom of Wolverine's claws they get thicker, which creates more friction, and it would be too much friction. Let's continue reading. If Wolverine's claws created no friction, he could easily cut through anything, but since they get wider as they go back, they will create friction which will slow down the stroke. He might not even be able to cut through the bone because the Hulk's super dense flesh would slow the blades. Okay, so slashing is probably out of the question because Wolverine does not possess enough strength to cut through that much muscle tissue and bone. So he will not be able to decapitate the Hulk. That's issue number one right there. He can't kill the Hulk that way. What other way can he kill him? Let's think about that before we do the next video. So stay tuned for the next video, which will discuss other ways Wolverine might be able to kill the Hulk. As always, if you have any opinion, please let me know in the comments. And thank you for watching.